So in the final arc of Andor Season 2, we saw a lot of these guys. They're dressed as Imperial officers, but wearing white armor that does not include a full helmet. And I figured today we could talk more about who these guys are and the role that ISB Tactical plays within the Imperial government. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. Now, before we begin, I want to throw out there that this will include spoilers for the final arc of Andor Season 2. If you haven't seen that and are avoiding spoilers, I'll leave a link up here to a video I made comparing the ISB and Imperial intelligence, so you can stay on the topic of the ISB. So, let's just dive right in with who are these guys? Well, as I mentioned before, the technical name of this unit is ISB Tactical. They are a tactical response unit that are part of the ISB, and while that should say it all, we can dive into that a little bit deeper. So the Imperial Security Bureau is an agency within the Imperial government tasked with maintaining loyalty within their own population and dealing with civilian threats. As such, they occasionally do have to engage in combat scenarios, and while oftentimes they would lean on other Imperial military units, mainly elements from the Imperial Army and occasionally the Stormtrooper Corps, to carry out their actions like we see during the Gorman Massacre, they would sometimes lean on their own tactical units, and that's where ISB Tactical comes in. When the ISB needs someone taken out or needs to carry out their own operations, particularly operations that are too sensitive to be carried out by regular Imperial Army forces or the Stormtrooper Corps, they lean on ISB Tactical, who themselves are elements of the ISB. For equipment, ISB Tactical agents often wear what are very similar to the units worn by Imperial Army soldiers, a set of body armor covering most of the body with not nearly as complete coverage as, say, Stormtrooper armor, but still quite sufficient coverage, and either a military helmet, like we see worn by Imperial Army soldiers occasionally, or the kepi cap that we see worn by Imperial officers and Imperial Army soldiers in situations like what we see on Aldhani, where they're mainly not expecting such heavy resistance. Beyond their armor, though, their equipment is incredibly varied. They carry a variety of different small arms, from blaster rifles to pistols, and the rifles, by the way, are from a variety of different types. We see them carrying primarily E10s, but there are some E11s in there as well, which does make sense. It seems like they're borrowing a lot of equipment from the Imperial Army and then modifying it to display colors of the ISB. For example, the white armor that matches white ISB uniforms. They use a variety of different grenades. We see used a stun grenade, which is more or less just a flashbang. As for vehicles, it's a little bit more of a question mark. We know they have light shuttles and small patrol craft as we see them deploy on Coruscant, but we don't know much beyond that, and it's likely they probably don't have much beyond that. After all, ISB Tactical is not really designed to fight battles. They're instead intended for snatch and grabs where they have to capture an individual, or small standoffs against small parties that likely only have small arms, so they don't necessarily need large military vehicles like AT-STs or AT-ATs, for example, which would be crazy overkill, which is not beyond the Empire, but maybe beyond the scope of the ISB. Now, the history of this organization is again a bit of a question mark. We really haven't seen them before Andor Season 2, so we really only know about the actions they played immediately following the Gorman Massacre and with the early stages of the rebellion, the hunt for Luthen Rael, known to the Empire as Axis. It's entirely possible that this organization or this institution was founded in the aftermath of the Gorman Massacre as sort of a response to an increased public cry against the Empire. Furthermore, we don't ever see them really operating off of Coruscant. We only see them carrying out the few operations we see on screen, and they're all on Coruscant, so it is possible, however not likely, that they're fairly limited in scope and really tied only to the core worlds and mainly Coruscant. Now, that kind of ties in with their technical designation. They're not actually an organization, but instead described as a task force, which to me suggests that it's a relatively small institution consisting of a few squads of infantry and their deployment methods, which would work well with what we see on screen. After all, when we are looking at the defense of the hospital, we see a number of stormtroopers being tied into that operation as well, leading me to believe that ISB Tactical's numbers are limited and they do often need to call for outside help. That being said, like any good police response unit, they do have a variety of different roles assigned to different members of this team, including a designated medic, which we see operating during the botched capture of Luthen. Now, I think it's worth noting, too, that we don't ever see them anywhere else. Now, the obvious real-world reason for this is they were created for Andor Season 2, but if we need an in-universe explanation, maybe they really are only used for very specific operations and very rarely employed by the ISB. I'm sure we'll see them again now that they've been added to canon, but so far this is the only instance of them being used, so it's entirely possible that they were limited really just to Coruscant, and we haven't seen that many stories from Coruscant in the days of the Empire, so maybe that's why we haven't seen them so much. All that being said, ISB Tactical could have been founded in response to the galactic reaction to the Gorman Massacre, an event that the Empire desperately and pretty extensively tried to engineer to have positive PR perceptions in their favor. If you'd like to learn about some of the methods the Empire used to try to convince the galaxy that the Gorman Massacre wasn't what it was, I'll leave a link up here to a video I made all about that. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think we're going to get to see ISB Tactical more. Do you think they'll be sort of retconned into the background of other events we've seen so far, or do you think they really are a very limited organization that were only used in instances like what we see in Andor Season 2, and as such they really wouldn't crop up anywhere else? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars or anywhere else in science fiction, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.